Assalamu alaikum. I am Sarwat Jamal from Sir Syed Government Girls College. I would like to commence my lecture on BCS course, that is Files and Database, under the supervision and guidance of College Education Department, Government of Sindh, and our Honorable Principal, Professor Khalda Parveen. Before describing the terms files and databases, there should be a general understanding of data and information. As we all know, that data is the collection of raw facts and figures that can be recorded. People tend to use terms data and information to mean the same thing. In computer studies, we have to make a very clear distinction between them. Data in a digital computer consists of a binary numerical values. The word data is a plural word and it may help to remember that its literal meaning in Latin is given something. So data are the items we give to a computer as its input, which it holds and processes as binary codes. And these values represent things such as the decimal numbers with which we are familiar, text characteristics, formatting codes, image pixels, or sound samples. It is unanalyzed, unorganized, unprocessed, unrelated. And we can see the various forms of data: text, numbers, audio, video, graphics, map. So your name, your residential address, your contact number, phone number, all these are the different examples of data. Your account number, your NIC number, all these are the examples of data. Let's suppose we have some text and some random words: Pakistan, BSCS, Sara, Defense Phase 4, 8, Karachi. If we analyze all these textual and numerical values and try to organize and process and try to relate, then we come up with a statement that is Sarah is a student of BSCS, lives in Defense Phase 4, Street 8 in Karachi, Pakistan. Now, all these textual data becomes information after organization and after processing. Now, what is information? Information is the result of processing data to give them context and meaning and to make them understandable. It is the output of processed data. So we can say the processed data is information and it is the logical meaning and it is based on analysis and decision making. Information that is the output from one system and it may become the data that are input into another system. For example, when you supply information to a program, it becomes the program's data. Of course, information can result from much more complex sorts of processing, such as searching, sorting, and mathematical and statistical calculations. Now, here we have some names: Alia, Verda, Bisma, Zain, and some random numbers, and again some text, and again some combination of alphanumeric data. But all these data don't make any sense. But after analyzing, organizing, processing, and relating, we come up with a table and we have given some captions or headings like roll number, name, calculus marks, stats marks, English marks, and then we calculate the total. And then on the basis of total value, we can decide either the student is pass or fail. So this tabular information, as we have put all these data into an organized form, that becomes information. It has context meaning. We know where is the source of the data, what is the source of the data, and what is the objective. The main objective of the data is to record and to use it in future. Now, the very important term, the database. Database is a collection of information that is organized so that it can be easily accessed, managed, and updated. It is a shared, organized collection of logically related data designed to meet the information needs of multiple users in an organization. It is a repository of logically related and similar data. Now, what is meant by the term database? As we are saying, collection of related data, right? Collection of logically related data. Let's take some examples like we can gather the age of some persons, price of cars, list of software houses, list of hospitals, and there are a lot of things. NIC numbers, account numbers. So these are different pieces of information. If we collect all this information, all these the data sets are called database. Can we call them database? No, we cannot call them database because it is a collection of data, but it is not a collection of related data. So we cannot say that it is a database. All these examples are not the database because in a database, there should be a logical relation, logical connection, right? So database is a collection of related data that represents some real world entities or objects. And if the changes are there in the real world, in the entities, then that changes should be reflected on that database. Now, if we talk about the four major components of a database system, then we have the users, the database applications, the database management system, and finally, the database itself. So first of all, we can see in this diagram that users cannot directly access the database or the database application cannot directly access the database. Are you understanding? The users must communicate with the database application and database application must collaborate with database management system, and it is the database management system, it is the responsibility of database management system to fulfill the requirements of database applications and to monitor, to access, and to perform all control and regulatory actions of data. Now here we will learn about users. You, I, we all are the users. Users are the people just like you or who might need to use the data or database. A user does not necessarily have to be a human being, right? It is possible, for example, for other software programs to be users of our database as well. So what do the users of database system do? They do many different things. You and I are users of database systems on almost the daily basis. Even if we don't realize it, we can look up for checking account balance online, we can produce reports, and we can seek information on Wikipedia or on internet. All these are the examples of us as users interacting with database applications. So we have to database application. Users use a database application to keep track of information as we do. We use different interface forms to enter, read, delete, query data, and to produce the reports. The database. Now we will learn more detail of the database. It is a self-describing collection of related records. Self, why are we saying self-describing? Here, the term self-describing means the structure of database is well organized, well defined. A few interesting things to note about the database itself is that it is a self-describing collection of related records. What is meant by self-describing? The database just not contains the data but also contains the definition of its own structure. Database also contains metadata. Now, what is meant by the metadata? Here, the term metadata means data about data. Whatever data we store or we are interested in storing in our database, like the roll number, name, program, course, then roll number, name, program, course, these are the fields or the attributes. What will be the data type? What will be the value? What type of value we are going to store in these fields? That information is itself a metadata. It means information about the data. That which type of data you want to store? We want to store, say, numeric value or integer value or any string. So these are the different values. This is again the metadata. The simplest way to understand metadata is that metadata are data which describes other data. And in the context of database, metadata are data which describe the structure of the data in the database. I hope you got it. Now, we will explore more about the database. What should be the contents? What are the contents that reside in a database? A database comprises the following major components or the contents: the user data, or we can say, in other words, the organizational data, and then metadata. As we have just described or talked about metadata, that the metadata means data about data or whatever table or record we are going to store, then information about that data. What type of value, what will be the characteristics, the properties, say the rules, the constraints, and what is meant by the indexes and other overheads. So the indexes and other overhead means the tables that we are going to create and the value that we are going to store in that. So application metadata, it also contains the application metadata. So these are data values that are used by the application which rely on the database. An application might store user preferences in the database. And here overhead data means indexes. Database management system, finally we have the DBMS. So first of all, we saw in the picture there is an interaction of user and there is an interaction between a user and a database application. Again, there is an interaction between the database application and database management system. So what basically database management system is? It's a software package designed to define, manipulate, retrieve, and manage data in a database. A DBMS generally manipulates the data itself, the data format, field names, record structures, and file structure. Now, the main thing to understand here, it's a software which is used to design or which is used to define, manipulate, retrieve, and manage data in a database. Here, it means we are talking about organizational data, the data which is stored in a database. And now we have a software, say DBMS. Now this DBMS is going to arrange, to manipulate, retrieve, and manage all the data which resides in database. And it also manipulates the data itself. It means it also deals with the metadata, the data format, field names, all the attributes, the record structures and file structures as well. And it also defines rules. It means the procedures, the constraints. So all these things will be defining and validating and verified and manipulated by the DBMS for the data which it has been arranging, or controlling. Now, we have different types of database management systems available in the market, say MySQL, SQL Server, Oracle, DBase, FoxPro, Access. Now, explore more about the database management system. As we have learned so far in the previous slide, that it is a software package. It's a type of program collection or a group of program which controls the data which resides in a database. So it acts as an intermediary between database applications and the database. As we can see, it is an intermediary between the database applications and the database, right? So it collaborates or manipulates or communicates with the data database application. It receives the request, and then after processing and after fetching or retrieving the data from the data repository, and after processing, it generates or provides the desired results to the database applications which the users can see on their interfaces or user interfaces. So basically, the DBMS manages and controls data activities. The DBMS creates processes and administers the database it controls. We are saying that DBMS creates processes. It means if a database application, any application, database application request for anything, it will request the DBMS. Now it is the responsibility of the DBMS to initiate or to create the process, and it monitor and administer, and then fetching the data from the database and the providing the suitable or the required results to the database applications, which will be displayed by the database applications to the users. Now, what are the major functions of a DBMS? Let's highlight some of the major tasks of database management system or the functions. So we have the functions: creates the database, it creates the tables, it creates supporting structures, it reads the database data, it modifies the database data, it maintains database structures and enforces integrity constraints or the rules, it controls concurrency, it provides security, the backup and recovery plans, and performance data backup and recovery. We can use a DBMS to create a new database, and within the database we can create tables and establish relationships between tables. We can read, write, edit, and delete data using the database management system. We can establish rules which regulate and control data in the database. The database management system provides additional layer of security for us and also provides mechanisms through which we can back up our data and recover, through which we can recover. And if anything goes wrong, the database is very critical piece of software. Businesses often operate with many different types of business rules or constraints. And one of the great things about working with databases is that the DBMS can establish and enforce many different types of constraints. And one of the most useful type of constraints that a DBMS can enforce is the referential integrity constraint, which we will learn in the next classes. And it also provides security, the backup and recovery procedures. Now, what is meant by the database application? And the database application is a set of one or more computer programs or websites that serves as an intermediary between the user and the database management system. So basically, the database management system deals with the database applications, and now here the database application acts as an intermediary between the user and the DBMS. So you have to keep it in your mind. Um, there are programs that rely on the database. So we are human users. For example, we might use a website which interacts with the database, and a website could be considered as a database application. Now, if we take a look, then we can see in this figure, we can see different components we just talked about. Here we have users, application programs, database management system, and the data repository or the database. Yes. Application programs, let's talk about the application program. As we see, it acts as an intermediary between the user and the DBMS, and application program is only accessed by the DBMS, and users can also access definitely the application program. The end users, as we have learned, who are the end users, just like people at the banking sector, or at point of sale, or at Nadra office, or at hospitals. In hospitals, so we have seen all these. Now there are some other type of users who are analysts or the programmers. Basically, these are the developers or the designers who develop or design these programs. And then we have the database designers who design the database management system utilities, the database administrators who work or manage the database management system. And we can see finally the database management system retrieves data from the data repository or the database. Thank you, students.